German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is urging China to exert its influence on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. He has met with President Xi Jinping and Premier Keqiang in Beijing. Mr. Scholz says he and the Chinese leader agreed that threatening to use nuclear weapons is irresponsible and highly dangerous. And he says if Russia should do so, it would cross a line that the international community has drawn together.
China ist ein großes Land. Als weltpolitischer Akteur und ständiges Mitglied des Sicherheitsrats der Vereinten Nationen hat China eine Verantwortung für den Frieden in der Welt. Ich habe Präsident Xi gesagt, dass es wichtig ist, dass China seinen Einfluss auf Russland geltend macht. Es geht darum, die Prinzipien der Charta der Vereinten Nationen, auf die wir uns alle verständigt haben, einzuhalten. Prinzipien wie die Souveränität und territoriale Integrität eines jeden Landes, wie sie auch China ein wichtiges Anliegen sind.
Mr. Scholz is on a one-day visit aimed at shoring up economic ties between Berlin and Beijing. This has sparked controversy in Europe as the continent is seeking to cut reliance on China. The German Chancellor, however, has defended the trip, citing the importance of keeping communication lines open. He insisted that direct talks with Chinese leaders were all the more important after a long hiatus. And for more on this, Olivia Xiong joins us live. Olivia, it appears that President Xi and Chancellor Scholz had successful talks in Beijing.
Yeah, well, even if the German Chancellor said that he had pressured China to do more about Russia, China not showing any signs that it was feeling any pressure. In fact, in a statement by China's foreign ministry, it said that Mr. Xi had called on China and Germany to work together as two major countries with great influence, even though he acknowledged that this was a period of change and instability amid a complex and fluid international landscape. But China keen to highlight how this year marked 50 years of bilateral relations between the two countries. And this visit really does come at a critical time as China faces tensions with the West and with Europe, this being exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, especially as it had just come shortly after China and Russia had declared this no-limits partnership just prior to that. Now, Mr. Scholz coming under pressure to do more, to be tougher on China, and to get China to use its influence to rein in Russia. But perhaps Mr. Xi's comments on this issue indirectly may come as maybe welcomed by other European countries, especially as he said that China supported Germany and Europe in playing a role to facilitate peace talks and that China opposed the threat or use of nuclear weapons.
Olivia, you talk about timing. Now, Chancellor Scholz's trip comes right after President Xi strengthened his hold on power within the party and therefore within the country, of course, at the 20th Party Congress. Should we be reading anything into this timing?
Well, the timing certainly comes as China has embarked on a flurry of diplomatic activity. We have seen leaders from Vietnam, Pakistan, Tanzania visiting China, which has been rare ever since this COVID-19 pandemic hit. And also, as we are expecting Chinese President Xi Jinping, just fresh after securing his landmark third term at the helm, to be visiting several countries, international summits, and meeting more world leaders, carrying on this overseas outreach, as we have seen during this party congress, this twice-a-decade event. We have seen Mr. Xi project this confidence that China was heading in a positive direction. Also, in the foreign ministry statement, saying that Mr. Xi briefed the German chancellor on the essence of Chinese modernization, also sounding a warning that political trust is easy to destroy but difficult to rebuild, and that it should be nurtured and protected by both sides. And he called on Germany to follow a positive China policy for the mutual benefit of both countries. This also, as we know, Mr. Scholz said that human rights issues had to be addressed by China But this was not seen in the statements issued by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, keen to project this position of strength, even as China has come under pressure and allegations of human rights abuses and crimes against humanity by the United Nations in Xinjiang. This is something, though, that China has denied and continues to show that it's coming from a position of strength, even as it's going into these meetings.
Oh, thanks. Olivia Xiong reporting live to us.
Well, let's bring in Ollie Barrett for Europe's perspective on these talks. Ollie, Olaf Scholz, he's come under some fire for going ahead with this visit to Beijing. He has the economy as well on his mind, no doubt. But why is it so important for Berlin to step up its ties with China at this time?
Dawn, it's absolutely partly to do with the economy and the fact that the European economy is in such a tricky spot at the moment, like much of the rest of the world. But Olaf Scholz is looking for further economic opportunities. He wants to boost trade with China as much as he possibly can. Now, there is that criticism of him domestically as well as more widely in Europe. But Olaf Scholz will say that actually some of the messages that he's able to deliver to Chinese officials are best done in person, that Berlin will be able to exert more influence over Beijing by having meetings like this, by making visits like this and showing up in person to have some of these conversations. That message on Ukraine, for example, Olaf Scholz calling for Beijing to exert more influence over Moscow to end the conflict in Ukraine. Olaf Scholz and his allies will say that that is a message best delivered in person, that they can get Beijing to listen more to messages like that when you do them the honour, really, of making an in-person visit. So Olaf Scholz will make that side of the argument, but it's deeply controversial. Some of his critics simply insist that it's exactly the wrong time to be making a visit like this, but it's partly to do with diplomacy and trying to exert influence, but clearly partly also the economy at a time when the German economy, the wider European economy, as I say, in such a tricky spot at the moment.
Well, Ollie, as controversial as this trip is, could it threaten in any way to sow further disunity within the European Union?
I think that's already visible. Yes, Dawn, we are seeing a number of European capitals really expressing concern about this visit. Some are doing so publicly, some are doing so privately. Many European officials worry that Olaf Scholz is taking Germany towards similar mistakes that it made with Russia, becoming over-dependent on Russian energy. And then when the crisis in Ukraine unfolded, really having to make difficult steps to try and unwind some of those arrangements. Now, it's also leading to division, we should say, within Olaf Scholz's own government. We've had cabinet ministers in Germany furious about not just the trip, but some of the deals that are being done on the trip. So you have that domestic concern too, and it also sets Germany apart from the direction of travel that some other European countries are going in. The UK, for example, UK officials are promising an updated, refreshed, integrated review by the end of the year on all things security interests when it comes to the United Kingdom. And we're being given very clear guidance here in London that that is going to see a significant beefing up in the language when it comes to China and the perceived threat from Beijing. So, as I say, real concern in a number of European capitals. Allies of Olaf Scholz will insist that he's there to send a message. He's there to not just do deals, but also try and exert influence. And they will say the only way to have some of these difficult conversations is to show up in person.
Ollie, thank you for that. Ollie Barrett there, reporting live from London.